Hey everyone, welcome to this deep dive we've got lined up just for you today.
Yeah.
We're going to be tackling the relationship between Algeria and France.
Yeah. It's a really
It's a complicated one.
yeah, a lot going on there.
Uh, our source material is this great analysis of the whole dynamic.
Mhm.
Um, and right from the start, I mean, one of the things that really kind of jumped out at me
Oh yeah.
was this fact that uh, France is still holding on to all these historical documents
Right.
from Algeria's colonial period.
Oh yeah.
Like, what's the deal with that?
I mean, it's really interesting because it kind of gets at that sense of like a lack of closure,
Yeah.
you know?
Like they're holding on to something.
Yeah, and it feeds into Algeria's feeling that France hasn't fully confronted its colonial past, right?
Yeah, let's go back to that colonial period then, because that lasted for 132 years.
A long
I
time.
mean, that's longer than the entire existence of the United States.
Yeah, and that period, and particularly the brutal war for independence,
Yeah.
continues to define the relationship today.
Yeah.
We're talking about deep scars. The Algerian War involved accusations of French war crimes, torture massacres.
Yeah, and like all the Harkis,
Yes.
Algerians who sided with France during the war.
Right?
I mean, their struggle for recognition and compensation is still ongoing.
It is, and it highlights how past actions have present-day consequences.
Yeah.
And France's reluctance to fully acknowledge its colonial actions just adds fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
Macron's 2021 statement questioning the existence of an Algerian nation before colonization was a major diplomatic misstep.
I mean, it almost sounds like they're trying to like control the narrative of history
Yeah.
rather than engaging in a true dialogue about it.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it plays into Algeria's perception of France as still trying to exert control.
Yeah.
And this feeling is amplified by ongoing geopolitical tensions.
So it's not just ancient history we're dealing with.
No, no, no.
How do these geopolitical power plays manifest today?
Well, Algeria, since independence, has championed non-alignment and support for liberation movements.
Okay.
And this often puts them at odds with France's approach on the world stage.
Right.
Imagine two seasoned diplomats playing a high-stakes game of chess.
Oh, okay.
Each move calculated to outmaneuver the other.
I see.
So their fundamental approaches to international relations differ significantly.
Yeah, can you give us some concrete examples of where these differing approaches clash?
France's military interventions in the Sahel region,
Okay.
particularly in Mali, are a prime example.
Yeah.
Algeria prefers political solutions and sees France's actions as destabilizing. It's
Right.
a point of major contention.
And then there's the whole issue of Morocco.
Oh, yeah.
France's increasingly cozy relationship with them must be like a thorn in Algeria's side.
Absolutely. France's support for Morocco's claim over Western Sahara directly challenges Algeria's position and fuels that regional rivalry.
Right.
It's a classic case of realpolitik.
Yeah.
Strategic interests trumping any sense of historical fairness.
To make matters even more complicated, Algeria is strengthening ties with Russia and China,
Right.
and that has to be raising alarm bells in Paris and other Western capitals.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to the relationship.
Right.
It signals a shift in alliances and raises questions about Algeria's long-term allegiances.
So we've got this volatile mix of historical baggage and conflicting geopolitical interests.
Yeah,
No wonder things keep blowing up.
exactly.
So let's talk about those flashpoints.
Yeah.
Specific moments where the tension really boiled over.
Well, Macron's 2021 statements accusing Algeria of exploiting colonial memory for political gain were a turning point.
Okay.
Algeria recalled its ambassador
Wow.
and banned French military flights from its airspace. It was a powerful statement of defiance.
That seems like a pretty drastic reaction.
Yeah.
Was Macron's statement really that inflammatory?
Well, it's important to remember the context.
Okay.
Algeria sees this as part of a pattern of disrespect and dismissal from France. The visa and migration dispute that erupted around the same time is another example.
Oh, yeah.
France drastically cut visas for Algerians,
Yeah.
citing concerns about repatriation.
But many saw it as like a punitive measure,
Mm-hmm.
like a way for France to exert pressure on Algeria.
Certainly, the timing of the visa restrictions, coupled with the ongoing tensions over historical memory,
Right.
led many to see it as a deliberate act of retaliation.
Right.
And then things escalated further with accusations of espionage and a media war.
Wait, espionage?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Algeria accused France of using Pegasus spyware
Oh, wow.
to conduct surveillance within their borders.
Okay.
This, combined with Algerian state media launching anti-France campaigns,
Right.
created a climate of paranoia and distrust.
Yeah.
It was like something out of a Cold War spy novel.
I can see why Macron felt the need to attempt a reconciliation visit to Algeria in 2022.
Right.
Did that help smooth things over?
There were some positive gestures, but the visit ultimately failed to resolve the core issues driving the tension.
Yeah.
France's refusal to extradite Algerian dissidents, including journalist Amir Boukour's, further strained relations.
So despite the attempts at reconciliation, the relationship remains incredibly fragile.
Yeah.
This fallout raises a critical question: who benefits from this tension?
Surprisingly, the answer might be Morocco.
Morocco really, how do they benefit from their rivals being at odds?
Well, France needs to maintain influence in North Africa. They're facing competition from other global players and need reliable partners.
Right.
Morocco is strategically positioning themselves as that stable, pro-Western ally.
Yeah, they're certainly not cozying up to Russia like Algeria is, that's for sure.
Right.
But doesn't France risk pushing Algeria further away by playing favorites?
It's a dangerous game. France is walking a tightrope.
Mm-hmm.
But let's consider the alternative for a moment. What happens if France does double down on its relationship with Morocco?
I imagine Algeria would see it as a complete betrayal, a sign that France will never truly treat them as an equal.
Exactly. It could deepen Algeria's sense of isolation and resentment.
Right.
They might retaliate by further strengthening ties with Russia and China,
Right.
potentially even using their energy resources as leverage against Europe.
An economic Cold War? That's a chilling thought. And it's not just about economics, is it? What about the impact on security and stability in the region?
Algeria is a key player in counterterrorism efforts.
Yeah.
If they feel abandoned by the West, they might be less inclined to cooperate.
Right.
It could lead to increased instability and violence, with ripple effects far beyond North Africa.
So the stakes are incredibly high. Is there any way chance for a more positive outcome? Can France somehow repair its relationship with Algeria without completely alienating Morocco?
It would require a major shift in France's approach.
Okay.
They would need to go beyond symbolic gestures and take concrete steps to address Algeria's concerns, acknowledge the injustices of the colonial past,
Right.
making progress on issues like Harkis compensation, and demonstrating a genuine commitment to treating Algeria as an equal partner.
Essentially putting their money where their mouth is. Actions speak louder than words, especially in a relationship as fraught as this one.
Precisely. But even if France manages to pull off this diplomatic feat, the road ahead will be bumpy.
Yeah.
There are just too many layers of history, conflicting interests, and regional rivalries at play.
It sounds exhausting, frankly. All this talk of diplomacy and high-stakes maneuvering makes my head spin.
Well, it's the reality of international relations.
Okay, so?
It's messy, complicated, and rarely straightforward.
Yeah.
But it's also vitally important that decisions made by these nations have far-reaching consequences, not just for the region, but for the world.
That's a good point. It's easy to get lost in the weeds, but we need to keep reminding ourselves why this matters. Why should the average person care about the complex dynamics between Algeria and France?
Because it impacts their lives in countless ways, from energy prices to national security to the stability of their own communities.
Yeah.
We live in an interconnected world, and what happens in one corner of the globe can have ripple effects that reach us all.
It's a stark reminder that we can't afford to be complacent. We need to stay informed, engage in dialogue, and hold our leaders accountable for making decisions that promote peace and stability.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, and the more we understand these complex issues, the better equipped we are to advocate for a more just and peaceful world.
I completely agree. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the historical roots of this conflict, the geopolitical forces at play, and the potential futures for Algeria and France.
Yeah.
But there's one more intriguing aspect of this story that I want to delve into.
I'm all ears. What else has caught your attention?
This whole issue of historical memory keeps coming back to me. We've talked about France's reluctance to fully acknowledge its colonial past and how that continues to fuel resentment in Algeria.
Right.
But I keep wondering who gets to control that narrative? Who gets to define the past and shape the way it's remembered?
That's a brilliant question, and it's at the heart of many conflicts around the world. The way history is taught, the monuments that are erected, the stories that are passed down through generations, all of these things contribute to a collective memory that shapes our understanding of the present.
And when those memories are contested, when different groups hold conflicting narratives about the past, it creates deep divisions and fuels ongoing conflict. It seems like that's a major obstacle to true reconciliation, not just between Algeria and France, but in any situation where there's been historical injustice.
You're absolutely right. Algeria wants France to acknowledge the atrocities committed during the colonial era, to apologize for the pain and suffering inflicted upon its people. They want their story to be heard and acknowledged.
But France seems reluctant to fully embrace that narrative. They acknowledge some wrongdoing, but they also point to the positive aspects of their colonial legacy. It's like they're trying to have it both ways.
It's a classic case of two sides talking past each other, unable to find common ground on how to interpret and remember the past.
Right.
And until they do, their relationship will likely remain fraught with tension and mistrust.
It seems like the past is never truly past, especially when it comes to issues of colonialism and historical injustice. Those memories continue to shape the present in profound ways.
And that's why it's so important to engage with history honestly and openly, not to dwell on the past, but to understand how it shapes our present and influences our future, to acknowledge the wrongs, learn from them, and work towards a future where those mistakes are not repeated.
Powerful stuff. Okay, we've explored the complexities of the past and present, but let's turn our attention to the future. We've talked about the various scenarios from cautious reconciliation to a complete breakdown in relations. What do you see as the most likely outcome for Algeria and France? Give us your expert prediction.
I believe the most likely scenario is a continuation of the current trend, a complex and often contradictory relationship marked by moments of cooperation and moments of tension.
So a sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of dance.
Yeah, exactly. There will be times when shared interests like energy security or counterterrorism efforts bring them together, but those moments will likely be punctuated by disagreements over historical memory, regional rivalries, and geopolitical maneuvering.
That doesn't sound like a very smooth or predictable path.
It probably won't be, but that doesn't mean there's no hope for progress. Both sides have a vested interest in finding some common ground. France needs Algeria's energy resources, and Algeria needs France's investment and technological expertise.
So pragmatism might be the key to a more cooperative future.
It's certainly a possibility, and there's also the growing awareness, especially among younger generations, that dwelling on past grievances won't solve the challenges of the present.
Perhaps a new generation, less burdened by the weight of history, can forge a new path forward.
It's a hope that many people share, but ultimately the future of Algeria and France will depend on the choices made by their leaders and the willingness of their people to embrace a more nuanced and complex understanding of their shared history.
That's a great point. This deep dive has been all about complexity, hasn't it?
Absolutely. We've peeled back the layers of history, geopolitics, and regional rivalries, but in doing so, we've also revealed the interconnected nature of our world.
And that's what I want our listeners to take away from this conversation. The world is not black and white. There were no easy answers. And understanding complex issues requires a willingness to engage with multiple perspectives, to challenge our assumptions, and to embrace nuance.
Well said. It's a reminder that we should all strive to be informed citizens engaged in the world around us and committed to seeking out knowledge and understanding, even when it's challenging.
Beautifully put. And on that note, we'll wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into the fascinating, often frustrating relationship between Algeria and France. Join us next time as we continue this exploration and delve even deeper into the complexities of our ever-changing world. All right, so we're back, and as we wrap up our look at Algeria and France, I'm really struck by all the different angles we've explored.
It's complicated.
Like from colonial legacies
Mhm.
to like straight-up spy thrillers. It's been a lot.
Yeah, and it really shows how even events that seem so far in the past continue to shape the present, Like the Algerian War for Independence, it still casts a long shadow over everything.
For sure. And I keep thinking about those accusations of French war crimes during that time. Like
Oh,
it's
yeah,
a sensitive topic,
yeah.
but I don't know, it feels crucial to grasp the current tension.
What's important to remember is not just the events themselves, but how they're remembered and interpreted, right? Like
Yeah.
the Harkis issue.
Yeah.
Their struggle for recognition is a direct link to that unresolved past.
It seems like France not really fully dealing with its colonial actions just makes things worse,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way for them to kind of acknowledge the past without getting stuck in all the blame and guilt?
That's the tough question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a balance.
Yeah.
On the one hand, there's a need to acknowledge things, to
Right.
recognize the injustices inflicted.
Right.
But on the other hand, just dwelling on the past can stop any progress towards a shared future.
So how do they move forward then? What does real reconciliation even look like here?
It takes a willingness to engage with different stories, right? To acknowledge how complex and contradictory history can be. It's not about erasing the past,
Right.
but understanding how it continues to influence us now.
This ties back to what we were saying before about who gets to tell the story of history.
Exactly.
Both Algeria and France have their own versions,
Mm-hmm.
and those versions clash.
And that clash is at the heart of the tension we see playing out.
Yeah. Algeria wants France to fully admit to the atrocities of colonialism,
Yes.
to apologize for the suffering,
Yes.
but France doesn't seem to want to go that far.
Mm-hmm.
They might acknowledge some wrongs, but they also point to supposed benefits of their colonial legacy. It's like they want it both ways.
It's a common response from former colonial powers.
Yeah.
They struggle to reconcile their national identity with the reality of what happened.
So how do we break out of this cycle? Is it even possible for two countries with this kind of history to move past it and build a healthy relationship?
It's definitely not easy, but history has tons of examples of nations overcoming seemingly impossible situations.
Okay.
It takes a real commitment to dialogue, to empathy, and to truly understanding the other side's perspective.
That sounds tough, especially with the current geopolitical climate.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking about France getting closer to Morocco, which just isolates Algeria more.
And then you have Algeria building ties with Russia and China, which adds another layer of complexity.
Exactly. It's not just between these two countries. It's on a global stage with so many players and different goals.
Right.
So let's bring this back to our listeners for a sec.
Okay.
Why should they care about this whole thing between Algeria and France? How does it affect them?
Because what happens here has ripple effects beyond North Africa.
Right.
It affects energy security for Europe, the fight against terrorism, even the balance of global power.
It really shows we live in a connected world.
We do.
What seems like a regional problem can actually have global consequences.
Exactly. And that's why staying informed about these things is so important.
Right.
Knowledge is power, and understanding these complex issues helps us have real conversations and push for solutions.
So true. As we wrap up this whole deep dive, what are the key takeaways you want listeners to walk away with?
Okay, first, the past is never really gone.
Huh?
Colonial legacies still shape our world, and we have to understand that history to deal with today's issues.
Makes sense. What else?
Second, even the most complicated relationships can change.
Okay.
The future of Algeria and France is up in the air, but there's always the potential for progress through talking, through understanding, and being open to different points of view.
I like that. And anything else?
And lastly, remember that even these events that seem far away have real-world effects on all of us.
Right.
Staying informed and engaged isn't just an intellectual thing, it's part of being a responsible citizen of the world.
So well said. Thank you so much for walking us through all this.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's been a fascinating look at history, geopolitics, and human relationships. Really insightful.
I always enjoy a good deep dive, especially one that makes us rethink our assumptions and learn more about the world.
To everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this journey. I hope you've learned some valuable things and maybe even sparked a new curiosity about our ever-changing world.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep talking about these things. That's how we learn, grow, and make the world a more informed and engaged place.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time. Stay curious, everybody.